Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Single best idea. It has been an extraordinary 24 hours, and dare I say, the effort since I believe it was Saturday at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Eastern Time has been just extraordinary, of staying with the markets, staying with what we do, and also this arch political moment for the nation. And today was no exception. Just wonderful conversations here. I really would emphasize our conversation with David Gura, the host of The Big Take, on his perception of the Midwest theology that Donald Trump and Senator Vance are trying to capture in Milwaukee. That was really a high point for us today. There are friends of surveillance that you lose touch with over the years, and then they come back. In our studios today from Zurich via Munich was Andreas Utermann, who was profound at Mercury Asset Management years ago, and then at Allianz in Munich, and now at Vontobel in Zurich in asset management. We had a piercing conversation on the future of active management, mutual funds and ETFs. He's migrated to Switzerland. We got an update. Here's Andreas Utermann on the state of Switzerland.
The economy is doing really well. I think part of the reason is that the level of trust by corporations that operate in Switzerland in terms of the institutional stability of the country is very, very high. Foreign direct investment into Switzerland knows that as well. It's one of the few countries in the world that is really stable from an institutional framework perspective. Interestingly, and that's really to the great credit of many Swiss corporations, the strength of the Swiss franc, which is multi-decade long and continues, is being absorbed by increasing productivity in many Swiss corporations, and that means that they can continue to export sufficiently.
Andreas Utermann of Vontobel of Zurich, Switzerland. Chris Whalen darkened the door today. He's been at work on an update of his magisterial book, Inflated. I can't say enough about the 400, 450 pages of Chris Whalen's Inflated. It is a waltz through American finance from the beginning through the 19th century into the 20th century. It ought to be a required read for every finance brat freshman in every college. And he's doing a redo of it off of what he did 15 years ago. It was great to talk to him about the analog back to the pandemic of 1919 and the Roaring '20s. He does agree this is a Roaring '20s that we're living at right now. Near the end of our conversation, I looked at the big banks, 4 big banks, and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, and I said, with their Citigroup.
Well, they're a top 5 money center bank because of the payments platform. But you're right, they have pulled back. There was a time when Citi was the biggest derivative shop in the industry. You know who it is now? Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley and Goldman now.
Where do you perceive Citigroup in 5 years?
Merged with somebody else, maybe with a big asset management business, maybe Schwab. But that's what they're missing right now. They sold that to Morgan Stanley with the Smith-Barney transaction. They don't have the asset manager to make them look like everybody else. And they're still, Fraser has done enormous work there in terms of getting their expenses in line, but she still has to cut 5 points out of their efficiency ratio before she can even talk about Jamie Dimon. That's the high bar he has set.
10 seconds, who would buy them? Who's lined up to be the one to fold in Citigroup in their international
I keep saying they should merge with Goldman. Let Citibank run credit,
Okay.
Let the Goldman boys run deals. Because Goldman cannot run credit to save their lives. They're getting a kicking every quarter in credit.
Chris Whalen, just definitive, and again, his note that he does is really a required read on Wall Street. We have much more coming up from Milwaukee. Joe Matthew and Kaylee Lyons leading our coverage here of the Republican National Convention. For Bloomberg Surveillance, it's simple. We're out on YouTube. Go to Bloomberg Podcast, search for that. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcast for all of our different radio product, including what Joe Matthew and Kaylee are doing on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as well. And this on Apple Podcasts. Single best idea.